Welcome to the Backyard Professor Live Show, Sunday night, February 2nd, 6 p.m. We are going to rock this joint tonight on Zechariah Sitchin and an analysis from one of my favorite Bible scholars, even though I will state right up front, he and I had our disagreements. There are some things I just could not accept, and realistically, I was the one that was probably in the wrong. It's all good. Unfortunately, he has passed away. He died far too young, and I want to dedicate this podcast to my dear friend Michael Heiser. Now, there are many sides on this subject. I've shared information with you on the Hopi, and I've shared information on psionics, and I've shared the ancient materials of the Greeks, etc. And there are so many angles to approach this, and that is what makes this subject so enjoyable. One thing that got me started with Michael Heiser years ago is I actually asked him, I saw him debate the LDS scholar, the then LDS scholar, David Bokovoy. And it was on the Council of the Gods, one of my favorite subjects in the Hebrew Bible. And I watched those guys debate it out in print. And I knew David for years, and they both more or less, it was a very good gentlemanly debate. And they basically came out even without convincing each other of their view. But the gigantic fireworks and explosions and bombs and bullets zinging and the Hebrew exegesis and the Greek exegesis and the ancient literatures that they were quoting back and forth, it was staggeringly wonderful. I got a hold of Dr. Heiser and I said, I have never seen a scholar go toe-to-toe with David Bokovoy like you did. And he had mentioned his PhD dissertation. And I asked him, where can I get your PhD dissertation from? And he kindly mailed me a copy of it. The Divine Council in Late Canonical and Non-Canonical Second Temple Jewish Literature, PhD dissertation for 2004. And as you can see, I got it spiral ring bound, and I've made my own index to this thing, and I've taken notes, and I've color-coded it. But this is without question, to this day, it is not outdated. To this day, this is one of the premier discussions on that topic of the ancient Near Eastern mythology, the ancient Near Eastern history, the social construct of how the chosen people of God communed with the heavens and how the heavens recommuned, gave revelation to the people. This is second to none. He analyzes the Hebrew in extensive detail. It was because of this is part of the reason why I went hunting through the scholarly stacks, and I have this particular dissertation. My particular copy is it's about 400 pages. No, I lied. About 300 pages. I ended up photocopying 20 more spiral ring bound copies of all, as much as I could afford back then, of every article in every scholarly journal on this Divine Council of the Gods, and I still have all those. There's a whole stack of them up over there. And I've read absolutely all of it several times, especially in light of what Heiser said. So I understood that now, and I've read Zechariah Sitchin. Here's his famous one, The 12th Planet, The Wars of Gods and Men, When Time Began. He's got another one about ziggurats. I mean, he's got like 15, 20 books. I don't know where all the rest of them are. I don't have them all anymore. I did at one point. I probably traded the lesser popular off for other books. It is the 12th planet that we're going to analyze tonight. But now, Sitchin wrote thousands of pages of material too, and there is simply no way I can cover every subject that he covered in one setting here. So tonight is basically going to be my introduction to how the scholarly world looks at Zechariah Sitchin. And I'm well aware that there are several sides to this man and his scholarship and his research. And I am well aware that I have biases, as does Michael Heiser. And I discussed some of his biases with him in his book, The Unseen Realm. Fabulous book, but I could not accept it all. And by then, unfortunately, by the time I got around to reading it, he had already passed on, so I couldn't talk to him about that. But anyway, be that as it may, welcome everybody. Welcome to you new subscribers. You keep coming in, and I'm very grateful. Hit the like button. Come on, stop talking in the chat. Hey, shut up in the chat and hit the like button real quick. Hit share and all that jazz, you know, subscribe, hit your notification and all that. And I do so appreciate all of your support. Now, these types of subjects, as you can see on my webpage, these are just not as popular right now yet as the contemporary UFO scene. We all want the UFO tech angle of this, right? God, what we would give to see an actual flying saucer come right in front of us and let us video it and then land and put our video on a tripod and go over there and shake hands with the aliens and meet them and, you know, take a camera up into their ship. That's what we all want. We want to meet the aliens. We want to see the aliens. We want to see their craft. It's the technology. How on earth do you zippity-doo-dah through the sky so fast and all that? Maybe we don't want to get on their craft. It might splat us against the wall when they take those fast right turns at 3,000 miles an hour. Who knows? But, and that is, I get it. And the government keeping it from us and the government lying like crazy. I get it. That kind of builds it up. And yet after a while, you have to say, oh, for Pete's sake, come on already. So, the real good news, at least from my angle, is I did get a notification that my nighttime binoculars will be here tomorrow. And I know they will be because they said they need to be signed for, and they're in Salt Lake City right now. So I will get those tomorrow. Now, I hope I don't have the same kind of technical difficulties with the binoculars that I have had with my monocular. I might. But I have a workaround, I think, that might work. Anyway, be that as it may, I'm not going to get out looking for the orbs or the flying saucers for at least a week that I'm aware of, unless I get a break in the weather, because the storm system coming through right now is like a river. And it is completely covering the state with nasty wind. Thank goodness it's not too cold. My skies are going to be cloudy for at least the next 7 days. So I'm going to keep sharing information of other people's analysis of new whistleblowers, of new books coming out, old books coming out. I'm reading materials on the Hopi from Gary David. That is absolutely sensational. So there's plenty to do, but we'll get this done. I keep saying be patient, and everyone's getting mad at me because they're calling me the newbie. I'm a newbie at the UFO scene of podcasting it, not necessarily learning about it, but I am not nearly as in-depth as 3/4 of you are. So thank you for your support and your excitement about what I'm doing. But there are some areas that I know at least as much as most of you do. And this is one of them. I read all of Zechariah Sitchin. Now for my bad confession, that's been a long time ago. I have also read the critiques. And that's what a lot of people don't like to do. But I am all about looking at the subject. And then once you look at the subject, look at all the angles on said subject, pro, con, and neutral. That, for whatever reason, is the gift I have been given from the good Lord, to be able to set aside my desire for learning which is true or false, right or wrong, etc., and just investigate, explore, see what it has to offer. And that's what I excel at for whatever reason. I'm not trying to brag because I'm basically a country bumpkin boy. But now I do want to clarify one thing. Yes, you're welcome for the jacket. Someone said, hey, man, we want to see the jacket. So here you go. Oh, thank you, Andrew Hessing. That is very kind. Yeah, let me real quick get into this. Thank you. That's a very kind. I think Trump has been given undue criticism for his word on the drones. The statement said nothing but left it open because he's getting information from more than the DOD. He has to be careful. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to get into the politics, but yeah, that's somewhat my view also. You're probably right. Some of us are criticizing him, but then he has always made promises, and half the time he doesn't follow through. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So his record is not stellar either, but I don't want to get into the politics tonight. I appreciate that. Very good point. So I have several bits of information from Michael Heiser, who is also was a premier biblical scholar. Now, the thing I love about Michael Heiser is that he developed critics. You go, what? Yeah. No, that sounds odd at first, but Heiser did not just rehash the same old theology, the same old history. He had a much more keen mind than just to agree to keep the peace. Michael Heiser, let me say this here and now as my best possible way to honor the man. Michael Heiser wanted the truth, and he didn't care if a particular translation or an analysis from the Enuma Elish and the Egyptian pyramid texts and the Hebrew Bible made it look like the Hebrew Bible was wrong. He never shied away from that kind of thing. He put the information out there and he said, there are places in the Bible where we have to re-examine it because it might be wrong. There are other places where people thought it was wrong, where he came out and he said, no, that is where the Bible is correct. And then he would also analyze the Hebrew and the Greek and the Aramaic. I mean, he was sensational for that. And so he ended up making enemies within Christianity who began to stupidly pontificate that, oh, well, Heiser's been deceived by Satan. He's worshiping the devil. That's always the last resort of intellectual deadwood arguments. When you accuse, oh, well, you're just possessed by the devil. You knew he won the argument when his critics got to that point, and they did. And several people called him apostate, etc. But he stuck to his guns, analyzing the texts, saying, we need to let the Bible speak for itself and not impose our modern understanding back onto it. And I highly respect that man. I did the same thing in Mormon apologetics when I was a Mormon and an apologist. And I left the field after a while because I could not take the inane stupidity of everyone saying you need to conform and follow the brethren. No, I don't. I need to explore and learn the truth. And that's what I'm doing in this subject as well. And I will explore other various interpretations. Now, there are times when I have come to a negative conclusion. There are times when I have come to a positive conclusion. And I change my mind down the road. All of a sudden, what are you doing, backyard professor? I thought you didn't believe that. At one point, I might not have, but new evidence came in to show me that I was either incomplete or just wrong. And you must follow the evidence, or you won't end up being correct. That doesn't mean the evidence has the final say so, and we can come to a hard, fast, done conclusion either. This is what is so fascinating about this subject. So anyway, I've rambled on long enough, but this is a very essential primer, a preface, as it were, to what I'm about to share, because if I have any followers of Zechariah Sitchin, you're probably not going to like tonight's show as much, because I'm not going to show him being supported by the evidence. The evidence destroys his thesis, according to the top-notch scholarship we have. That is not to say that the Bible scholars are 100% accurate either. But for the sake of the presentation, I'm picking a side. Now, it may come about that in the future, I will pick Zechariah Sitchin's side and come back, present another show where I support Zechariah Sitchin. But tonight, we get to see Michael Heiser's reasons, and they are powerful because I have been able to grab several of these sources that he recommended. I always grab sources that Mike Heiser recommended, and I never regretted it. So I have been able to read these sources also, and Heiser's not wrong. That is what is so remarkable. So let's get going. I've got to take off my glasses so that I can see. These glasses are great for driving cars, but boy, they suck for reading up close. So anyway, welcome everybody. Here we go. And don't, this is one of those subjects where people can get very emotional and very angry. So let's keep it calm in the chat. You know, we're all friends here. If we're not, that's your problem, not mine. But yeah, don't try to convince everyone that you're right and everybody else is wrong because you've read 5 or 6 books, because all of us have in this subject. I just want to present something for your consideration that I find very significant. So with that being said, here we go. Let me, oh, I've got to bump this up here. There we go. Oh, now I can do this. Yeah, and let's avoid the politics in the chat. Good point, please. We don't need to be politics right now. We're not about politics. We're about ancient astronauts and biblical Hebrew, Anunnaki, Nephilim analysis, and Nibiru. That's the 3 subjects I'm going to cover: Anunnaki, Nibiru, and the Nephilim. Maybe not in that order either. So let me share the screen, and I want to get to the, is this the one I want to do? Yes, this is the one I'll start with. We'll start with the Anunnaki. Now, and before I do this, let me just say one thing, just so you know. I felt that Robert Temple, in his book right here, in his book, The Sirius Mystery, did a halfway responsible job of trying to understand the ancient materials. And Michael Heiser also has arguments against Robert Temple. So see, I have to check my bias too. The one thing Temple got correct, he might have made some slip ups and there's some bad stuff on the Dogon tribe, and that's where Heiser focused, because Heiser apparently did not feel it necessary to get into the mythological background of it all. That is where I felt Robert Temple did his most exceptional work, is in the mythological historical background, not of the Dogon, but of the ancient world's fascination with the constellation Orion and the star Sirius. And I loved his analysis of the Greek myths, the Sumerian myths, the Mesopotamian myths. I felt that was a good part of his book. That's not a part Heiser touched. So I have to check my bias as well, right? So let me start with the Anunnaki. I have something I will read. Yes, I will read, and then we will look at a computer analysis that Heiser videoed and took us step by step on how to explore this. Very cool how Heiser did that. So let me just read this. As I noted in my open letter to Zechariah Sitchin, I have challenged him and other ancient astronaut researchers to produce one line of one cuneiform text that demonstrates his ideas about the Anunnaki are really in the Sumerian texts. I want to see one line of one text that says things like the Anunnaki inhabit a planet or inhabit Nibiru, or that the term Anunnaki means people of the fiery rockets, that sort of thing. Now, I could drone on about Mr. Sitchin's bogus translations and understanding of the Anunnaki, but I thought of something much better. And this is what I love about Heiser, is he does do stuff like this. You don't need to take my word, Heiser's word, for any of this whatsoever, for this very cool reason. We live in a great age, you guys, so that we can all check things out for ourselves. The Sumerian texts, all of them, are online in English translation, and they are searchable even by Sumerian word. So Heiser says, I invite you, no, I challenge you to click on the link below and watch me search the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature right before your eyes for the Sumerian word, Anunnaki. Here is the PDF file of the search results. I do have that. We're not going to look at that tonight, but it's best if you do the search, since you will be able to click through the search results and get to the English translation of the hits. Watch the video, and I do have that video, and we will watch it. It's only a 4-minute video, and it is absolutely awesome how Heiser does this. In other words, and again, just like the UFO subject, show me the evidence. No, I mean, make it good. Don't tell me. Don't bear your testimony to me that you know the Anunnaki is misused by Zechariah Sitchin. Show me how it is, and Michael Heiser delivers. Let's take a look. I've got to find, there it is, Sitchin. Okay, let me get the screen shared, and we'll watch this quick video clip together. This is sensational that we have this available for us. We can search any subject in all of the Sumerian texts corpus that exist. It's all available, all of it, and it's searchable. It doesn't get better than this. So I do believe that's it. Yes, let's take a listen. Let me get this going here. Oh, man, that's a small screen, isn't it? I apologize. I will leave the link to Michael Heiser's presentations here in the description of my video. Let's take a listen to this. This is cool how he does this. Whoop.
As you can see, I'm here at the website of the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. I'm going to show all of you how to search for the term Anunnaki in the Sumerian literature. You'll notice this is maintained by Oxford University. The database has 400 literary compositions that it draws from. It's all the major epics, all the major sources. You can get results in transliteration, and you can get to English translations once you've searched. And I'm going to show you how to do that. You need to make a fundamental decision. You're either going to take Zechariah Sitchin's books and take his word for what he says about the Anunnaki, and he rarely ever tells you what text he's citing. Or you can go to this website, search the term yourself. You'll be able to go to this site and type in what I'm going to type in, which you're going to see me do. Search the text corpus for yourself, get to the data, and look all of them up. And I'm supremely confident that you're not going to find any evidence at all for the translations and the ideas that he puts forth in his books and says that are in the Sumerian texts. So let's get started. The first,
I really like this. Hold on. I'm gonna at least hold on for a quick sec. I really like how he says we now have the choice. You can either believe what you're reading here. Now, and let's be realistic, and I'm in this boat with all of you, unless I have a Sumerian expert in the audience, which is seriously improbable right now because there's not a lot of Sumerian experts in the world. It doesn't pay very good money to be a Sumerian expert. So how can we check on his translations? Now, Heiser is strictly correct when he says there's a lot of places in Sitchin's texts where he does not give you which tablet he's quoting or where, or which part of an epic he is quoting and using. Heiser is correct there because I've been reading off and on this whole week in Sitchin's materials getting ready for tonight. And there are many, many places where it appears to me Sitchin is simply asserting the information. So we can check every idea Zechariah Sitchin produces in the actual texts that he claims he's quoting. We can even look up those actual texts and read them for ourselves, which is extremely useful. So that being said, let's see how to look up the word Anunnaki here. This is flipping cool.
First thing you need to do is click on Advanced Search. And let me make this page a little larger. Here at the top, in Search For, you need to type in those letters exactly as I have them. This tells the search engine that it's looking for Anuna, and it's a deity name. Just leave form the way it is. After you do this search, you can come back and play with this a little bit and sort by keyword, and you're searching all the texts in the corpus. So once you've done that, just hit your enter key, and our search is populating. Take a little bit of time. Don't have a super fast connection, but we have 182 hits. So 182 occurrences of the term Anunnaki. You see in green, you're going to have the various spellings. So it even catches alternative sign spellings and text spellings, if I could say it that way. And you could just scroll down here. I've made a PDF of this search and put it on the website. The PDF's not really going to do you that good, or that much good. I'd rather see you run the search for yourself, because here on the left, you'll notice we have a a numbering system here. If you see TR right here, my cursor's right at it, that means there's a translation available. Now, the first one, there's no translation, because if we click through this, there's nothing to translate except the name. Right here it is. It'll pop up to the top when you click on one of those links. Right here we have the deity name Anunnaki. So there's nothing about the Anunnaki that's said. It's just a name and a list. But if you come here and you click on translation, this is a larger text. You can see we have an inertia text. And right here at the top, lines 652 to 661 is our first hit, the hit we were navigating to, the Anunna gods. So this is how you use your search results. And I invite you, I challenge you to run the search, look up all the occurrences of Anunnaki yourself, and you'll find out that Zechariah Sitchin really is just not telling you the truth about the Anunnaki. He's making it up. And this is the best way to check for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Run the search yourself. Look at the results. That's the end of this video.
So that to me is so exceptionally helpful, because the one thing I did notice, the difference in the approach to the Anunnaki, and I get it. There are YouTube documentaries that get millions of views because they've got it all fabulously dressed up with AI artwork, and they've got the overwhelming, dramatic, and powerful music, and they have the voice of the narrator who is able to convince you that the gods came down and they conquered the mere human slaves, and the slaves dug gold. I mean, they have all of it playing out so dramatically, so beautifully choreographed, that you really think you're studying history, and you're not. The thing I discovered is, as Sitchin was explaining all of these sumptuous, astonishing roles that the Anunnaki were doing, and as they were going back and forth through the galaxy and the universe, and they were conquering worlds, and they were enslaving mankind, and they were so powerful, and they would do this and that, etc. When I read about the Anunnaki in Robert Temple, the Sirius Mystery, his connection to the Anunnaki is much more solid, down to earth, and realistic. He simply says they're there as a placeholder for the number symbolism of the number 50, because Temple ties in that number with the very important revolution between Sirius A and Sirius B. It takes 50 years to complete. That's why the Anunnaki, from Temple's point of view, was so vital, is because it helped them remember their home had a rotation period of 50 years. The Anunnaki did nothing but sit on their thrones. They were kind of a placeholder. The important part was their symbolism, not all this stuff, all of these adventures and conquering of worlds and enslaving humans, etc. Nothing like that is in the Sumerian texts at all. So I distinctly remember when I was reading Sitchin, I kept going back to Temple saying, you know what? Temple doesn't say that. Temple doesn't say that. Temple doesn't say that. Temple does. Where is he getting the Anunnaki? How could Temple have missed it? Because the two gentlemen are reading the same texts. Now we have the perfect way to discriminate between who is true, who is telling it right, who is not, because now we can go to the texts ourselves. I love this approach. This is what I like. It's like I tell the UFO community, show me the evidence. Right there, man. He even showed you how to use it. I love that kind of stuff. So anyway, let's take a look at the next item that I wanted to share with you from Heiser. And this is so very important because, in fact, I think what I will do, is that it? No, that's not it. Is that it? No, that's not it. That's not it. Yes, this is the one. It's another, instead of reading it to you, now I have two ways of doing this. I can read you the text, which takes a whole lot more effort and time, and I'm not trying to be lazy. I'll be happy to read it if you really need it. But Heiser has done a series of videos and video clips where he is explaining the various things, and the way he explains it is probably better than the way I would explain it. And so hopefully some of you have not studied Heiser in this relationship, so that tonight is something new. If you have, this is a great refresher course. Let me share this with you. Yeah, this is the one. Let's see where it's at. Yeah, this is the one. I want to make sure that, yep, this is it. Okay, so I want to take it to the point. Well, I'll give you the introduction because it's kind of catchy and fun.
Welcome to Fringe Pop 321, the show that believes the world is stranger than we think, but thinking should not be strange. Take a look at this image. Cuneiform scholars have labeled it VA243. That's an abbreviation of the museum in Berlin that it's in, but this isn't sort of a trivia contest. What I want you to notice is there are three figures in this seal image. It's Sumerian, Mesopotamian material, and the two figures on your left, okay, the two leftmost figures have something interesting in between the two heads. Is that the sun? And if it's the sun, are those planets around the sun? Well, there are a lot of people who think so, and this cylinder seal has given rise to something called Nibiru, the belief in 12 planets, an extra planet, also known as Planet X.
Now, this was probably one of the most popular parts of Zechariah Sitchin's book. He talks about this in the 12th planet. And it is in chapter 7, the epic of creation. You can see there is that same cylinder seal. And Sitchin will take advantage of the ignorance of all of us at the time until I started studying this on my own. And he claimed that this is depicting our solar system. So he said it's not to scale, his drawings, but he begins a long, rabid discourse in chapter 7 on the 12th planet, the extra one that is in our solar system, etc. And it's all based on a complete misidentification and misinterpretation of this cylinder seal. If this cylinder seal is shown to be something other than what Sitchin said, the entire crux of Sitchin's scholarship is out the window. None of it is worth diddly spit. It's junk, literally. So it is truly important to get this started off on the right foot. And Heiser does this through the Sumerian scholarship, through the Sumerian scholars and their scholarship, who are experts on the various seals here. Let's keep going. I just wanted to share that with you because that chapter 7, I remember when I read that and I was so electrified saying, oh my gosh, the ancient Sumerians, I mean, this was like 30 years ago, in my ignorant youth. Oh, you mean the Sumerians knew all about our solar system, etc.? No, they did not. Let's keep listening. This gets very interesting.
Is this legitimate? Is this really what this seal describes and depicts? Well, let's find out. Anyone familiar with the television show Ancient Aliens, or just generally internet conspiracy talk about the end of the world, will recognize the terms Nibiru and Planet X. The two names are actually interchangeable. They refer to allegedly a rogue planetary object on a collision course with Earth, roughly in the 21st century, which would of course be this century. Where does this come from? Where do we get this term Nibiru? Because it's kind of an odd term. And why would Nibiru be called Planet X? Well, the answer to that is Zechariah Sitchin. In his famous book that sold millions and millions of copies, The 12th Planet, Sitchin used that cylinder seal and his sort of understanding. I don't want to say translation because he's not really translating tablets, but his understanding of certain cuneiform tablets to articulate the idea that the ancient Sumerians believed that there was an extra planet that we just don't know about. Now, you say, well, how did they get that? Well, it's true that in antiquity, the ancients thought of the sun and the moon as sort of the same kind of object as the planets that we would think of today. So if you look back at the cylinder seal and you assume that the object in the center is the sun, and then you count the dots around it, you actually have 11 dots plus the sun would be 12. Now, that number's significant, 12 planets. If you go by the counting that we use now, we only have 9 planets plus sun and moon. We would only have a total of 11. Therefore, if you're buying what Sitchin is selling, you have 12 planets, which means you have an extra one. And that extra planet has been referred to as Planet X. Now, in Sitchin's system, he gives a name to this extra planet. He refers to it as Nibiru.
So that is as plain an explanation as I've ever found on where this thing comes from, and this idea of Nibiru. And so it is really important to understand, is the identification of this solar system in this ancient Sumerian cylinder steel accurate? I'm going to skip his discussion of Nibiru for a moment and go forward in this tape, because he does talk about Nibiru in the texts, and this is really important. So give me just a sec to do this. Hold on, I wanted to write down where I am at in the video. I'm at 3:51 in case I have to come back to this. Now I want to get over here to, I'm going to skip the astronomy, the Sumerian and Mesopotamian astronomy for the moment. Here we go. This is where I wanted to get. Here is his explanation of Nibiru in the texts.
So what do cuneiform astronomical tablets tell us that's relevant to our subject matter, Nibiru, this allegedly rogue planet? Well, Nibiru is actually specifically mentioned several times in the astronomical material from Mesopotamia. It is associated with the planet Jupiter, the planet Mercury, and it's also generically referred to as a star. Now, in 2015, we got a little more information. There was a publication in the CDLI newsletter. That's the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative. So it's very recent. And the writer there noted that the name Nibiru could be assigned to any visible astronomical object that marks an equinox. So we have a bit of information here. We've got the term associated with an equinox. It's a generic star. It's associated with Jupiter. It's associated with Mercury. Another astrolabe includes Nibiru, and this is important, showing up annually. Now, think about that. We've got a bunch of planets associated with Nibiru, but the planets get names. There's no reference to any planet beyond Pluto that's called Nibiru in the actual texts. We also get this notation that Nibiru shows up every year in some way. How in the world can we take the information that's actually in the tablets and align it with what Zechariah Sitchin is saying? Well, the short answer is we can't. Zechariah Sitchin was essentially making up his information about Nibiru. He doesn't give you the references in the tablets for what the Sumerians actually said about this object and how they used this term. But it gets even worse than that. If you look at all of the cuneiform astronomical tablets and you essentially write down every time a planet is observed and named, you don't get any reference to any planet beyond Saturn.
So, again, I'm going to compare and contrast the different types of scholarship here between Robert Temple and Zechariah Sitchin, whom I threw on his head over there. Sorry, dude. I didn't mean to hurt you. Temple did not focus on what the texts were saying. He was focusing more on the mythological, symbolic aspects of what it was pointing to. But then he wasn't discussing the celestial mechanics of our solar system as much as he was discussing the importance in the ancient religious views of their religious and spiritual needs of the constellation Orion and the star Sirius. And he discussed the mythology, the basis of a star system and a group of stars outside of our solar system, because it was Temple's contention, whether he's right or wrong, that the origin point is Sirius. So Temple didn't worry about reading the texts, and that's what makes this so valuable as a comparison contrast type of research and scholarship for us to engage in, is reading Zechariah Sitchin. And I would encourage you, if you haven't, go ahead and do so, but not as the final say-so and answer. No one has that, but read Sitchin, and then as a great way to compare contrast, read Temple, and then as a great way of comparison contrast, read Heiser, and then as a great comparison contrast, look in the Sumerian texts yourselves. You see the value of my approach of look at this from all sides and then do your own comparing. That's what I advocate. Not necessarily to come to any fast, hard, difficult conclusions about what really happened and what didn't. You know, the good news is we like to imagine we know. The bad news is we don't. We don't know. The crazy thing about history is this is the discipline of what has happened. And the blitzoid lunatic part of this is, even during my lifetime, just 64 years, what I was taught in my freshman and sophomore and junior and senior year in college in the 1990s that I paid serious money for. Back then, to me, it was a lot of money. None of that is usable. None of it. Because the one thing that is more rewritten than any other discipline is history. Ancient history, medieval history. Oh my goodness. There is constant analysis. Now, there's another spectacular subject I'm looking forward to making videos on, and that is going to be King Arthur and the Holy Grail. There is some new information on that I just got wind of, and I will gather. But I've got a whole section in my library. That's one of my favorite subjects. This also has to do, crazy enough, with UFOs. I promise, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. So there's so many literatures to investigate and explore and share, and yet at the same time, any hard, fast conclusions that I had just 20 years ago, I have to let go of. Now, I look at the statistics on my channel. I happen to know the vast majority of people who watch me, because I'm an old fart fuddy-dud in my 60s, even though I act like I'm a young kid and I'll never change that, is the vast majority of people who watch my channel religiously. And thank you so much for your support and encouragement and friendship and love and enjoyment and laughs together, cry together, etc., exploring together, is you're between ages 45 and 70. So this applies to you. What you think you knew 20 years ago, forget about it. That is not how history is. Whatever you read, I've got favorite books back here. I am so not kidding. I've got favorite books. Still, one of my favorite science sections, I could never really get rid of him, is my Isaac Asimov section up here. He was one of my favorite science authors. He was crazy blitzoid awesome. And I read dozens of his books, and ain't none of them worth spit, hardly, today. So that's why I have an updated science section back over here. And fully half of that bookshelf is no longer valid. And that's not that old of a bookshelf. Janet Dim, that makes me mad. Do you know how much money I have spent on these texts to get knowledge that I now have to let go of because it was incomplete and wrong? Did you know, crazy enough, that as you get up higher into mathematics, the same thing happens? Science, math, philosophy. You think I'm kidding? Just 100 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to hardly talk about that subject, infinity. And yet that subject has changed as well. We kept discovering more and more and more ever since George Cantor. And by the way, for those of you who love this stuff, The Mystery of the Aleph, Mathematics, the Kabbalah, and the Search for Infinity by Kaplan. Oh, that is a fabulous book. Good cultural, historical overview. What I'm trying to say is nothing is final. Just because I'm sharing Michael Heiser right now doesn't mean I accept him as the final word on any of this either. No, I do not. I am simply showing that the evidences which we possess at this point, and the Sumerian corpus of literature, the ancient Egyptian literatures that we have, the pyramid text, the coffin text, the Book of the Dead, the books of breathings, etc., we don't have a complete corpus of texts that was ever written at all. So things can be found and discovered. LIDAR has now begun being used in archaeology, which is absolutely revolutionizing the Mesoamerican archaeology down there in Guatemala and Honduras and the Yucatan, etc. There are vastly more cities and huge buildings that we thought was jungle, and they only began using LIDAR about 8 or 9 years ago. So get ready for a revolution, because their knowledge of astronomy and physics and architecture and symbolism and the gods and religion, etc., we may not know, even based on what we have yet. All kinds of new stuff can come out. And this is enough to drive you crazy. So understand, I'm not against learning. I am not anti-Zechariah Sitchin. I am not anti-Michael Heiser. I am not anti-Sumerian, Mesopotamian, etc. I am pro-investigation of all sides as a tentative basis of understanding what's real and true. But be assured that will change. And if that drives you crazy, I feel for you. You're going to go blitzard crazy. You're going to end up in the nut house. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm not trying to get preachy. I'm just saying this is the basis of scholarship. And it's not because I'm a bona fide PhD wielding professor. I know I go by the handle backyard professor. I used to take all my books with me when we would go camping and fishing, and my wife would watch me fishing, wading in the river waist deep, fishing for fish while I was reading a book. And she said, "You're like the backyard professor. You bring all your books with you. At the campfire, I would be reading a book, or at the picnic table, I would be opening a book, and we would have a wonderful discussion about what I was reading or whatever." And I mean, those were great old days. We had a ball out there. We got away from the telephones and the TV and all that, and I brought my books, and we had more fun discussions that way than we ever had. So that's why I'm the backyard professor. Not because I know the answers. A professor is one who professes, not necessarily knows. And what we profess can and realistically will be overthrown, outgrown, outdated, etc. through time. And I don't care who you are. If you think you have found the truth, you're the worse off of us all. I used to think that myself. I get it. We want that anchor. We want that assurity and certainty. Certainty is not in this life, folks. The only thing that is certain is change. Nothing else is. And we're finite, so we're never going to get to the last word. We're never going to get a comprehensive understanding of the whole. For one thing, we can't even see it. I mean, the universe is expanding at 186,000 miles a second out there, and we can't hardly see. We don't even have 5% of our ocean volume understood on our planet. That is a mere speck of dust in the cosmos. We don't know 3% of the entire universe. And yet here we love to pontificate. We have the truth. This is how it works out in space, etc. And now along comes Robert Temple in his new book, the new science of heaven about plasma, and he says, man, 99.9% of the universe isn't even atoms like we were told. It's plasma, and completely yanks the rug out from under us of our supposed knowledge of actual physics. I'm telling you, this is enough to drive you insane if you want certainty. My advice is look for probability with the understanding that you will have to change your mind based on evidence, because reality only is ever understood by evidence. And again, the new interpretation of ourselves is now something science has to catch up to. In this regard, it's not objective to think only objectively and ignore the subjective, because the greater level of reality comes from within through subjectivity. And science is wringing its hands over this issue. Now we hear the UFOs, the aliens, the NHI, the EBE, call them whatever you want. They communicate with us psionically? Are you kidding me, man? That ain't science. Who cares? That's how they do it. And it's real. We have millions of witnesses. And so, surprise, we have to completely redo what we think we know in science also. No discipline is immune from a larger expansion into a territory unknown, which for the most part definitely contradicts what we thought we knew. And that's reality. So this is a tough one to adjust to. It's really interesting. It's quite a challenge. It's quite fun. So anyway, boy, I really got off on a kick, didn't I? I didn't mean to. But that's what the backyard professor is known for, and that's what I do. Let's keep going. Let me get on one more. Let me share one more item here that I felt was extremely interesting. Yes, on the cylinder seal. This is critical. This is the whole reason why Zechariah Sitchin does not have the last word on his philosophical ancient historical interpretation, because the solar system in this cylinder seal is examined.
Now, this brings us to an obvious question. If the Sumerians and Mesopotamian civilization after Sumer that produced all of this astronomical information in the tablets, if they didn't know of any planet beyond Pluto, what's up with that cylinder seal that we started the episode with? What's up with VA 243? Well, we need to take a closer look at that. If we look at the cylinder seal closely, you'll see on the left-hand side, to the left of the standing man, there is Sumerian. There's text on this cylinder seal. There's one vertical column of Sumerian markings, Sumerograms on the left. And on the right, next to the, or behind the seated deity, you actually have a few more vertical columns of text. These are Sumerograms. Now, believe it or not, they actually say something. Now, you might be led to think by what you see on Ancient Aliens that, well, boy, I'll bet there's something written on here that tells us about the 12 planets. Actually, that would not be the case. And we have a situation here where we have Sumerian material. We can read it. It's been translated. So let's just do that and clear that up. You might, if you have a good eye, looking at the seal, notice that the vertical column all the way to the left and the vertical column all the way to the right are identical. They actually say the same thing. And then the other two columns are different.
What are they saying? Well, we actually don't get a whole lot of information here that's interesting. We have the first line that says in Sumerian, Dub Siga, which is a proper name, Dub Siga, somebody's name. Okay, glad it's not mine. Then you have another line, Ili Il Laat, Ili Ilat. It's another proper name, another name I'm glad I don't have. And then the third line, the third distinct combination is the word for your servant. So basically, you have one person giving someone a seal to another person, and they include the phrase your servant. So it was probably a gift or denotes the giving of a gift. Again, it's not very interesting, it's not very exciting, but here's the point. It doesn't say anything about 12 planets. So that leaves us with the remaining question of, well, what does that iconography mean? What does the picture mean? Because it sure looks like the sun with planets around it. What's up with that? Now, the key to this whole discussion is a certain assumption. If we look at the cylinder seal one more time, again, the figures to the left, between them, we have what looks to our eye like the sun. Zechariah Sitchin assumed that this was, in fact, the sun. And that led him, again, to count the dots around it and come up with this theory. Well, there's just one problem. This is not the way in Sumerian art that they would depict the sun.
And now we get to an interesting crux where, if you're going to jump into a subject, jump in with both feet and look at all the evidence. Don't stop with the evidence that only supports what you believe or what you want to propound is true, but you really have to look at it all. How was it that Zechariah Sitchin was so unfamiliar with the Sumerian iconography and the Mesopotamian art? Because there are hundreds of examples that show how these ancient people on their metal tablets, their clay tablets, their rock, their stone, whatever they carved their language and art on. There's hundreds of examples of how they depicted the sun, and this one isn't it. How on earth could Zechariah Sitchin miss that? Let's keep watching.
It's not the sun. The usual sun iconography includes wavy lines. So you could have a circle with or without points. And the important element is with or without points, it'll have wavy lines, almost like giving off heat. That is the way a Sumerian would depict in artwork the sun. Our cylinder seal sign or symbol does not have the wavy lines. It is not the sun. And so Sitchin's assumption from the get-go was wrong. Now we can see other examples of this, and there are actually many in Sumerian, Mesopotamian art. Here's an interesting one. I particularly like it because we have examples side by side of the moon on the left. You can see it has a crescent moon, very easy to pick out the iconographical meaning of that. In the middle, we have the sun. We have a pointed object, but it has the wavy lines. It's consistent. And then right next to that, we have something that looks a little bit similar to what we actually see on the seal. It's a circular object with pointed arms, as it were, but no wavy lines. It only has points. That's typical iconography for stars. Now, VA243, our cylinder seal, has that symbol, the symbol that we would associate typically if we knew Mesopotamian art, with a star or stars. That's what we actually see on the cylinder seal. The dots, therefore, would not be planets because we don't have a sun. You don't have planets orbiting stars, just random stars. But let's take it a little further. Even if we assumed that Sitchin was right, even if we assumed wrongly that this was the sun, the positions of the dots around his alleged sun don't make any astronomical sense. If you look at their size, there are big ones and there's little ones. You would think the big ones are planets like Jupiter or Saturn. Their position around this alleged sun object is wrong. They're in the wrong celestial position if indeed they depict those planets. So no matter how you look at it, there are mistakes about identifying this iconography on the seal with the sun and then a whole collection of planets.
And so his whole idea of a solar system, of a planet that technically, quote, crossed over into, and that also is disputed by Heiser. I don't have time to go into it tonight, for which I apologize. Maybe I will. But so this whole idea of a solar system is just a mistake. But his entire basis of the Anunnaki crossing over and the planet Nibiru, etc., crossing over, and the Anunnaki enslaving the humans, etc., all of that just vanishes in the night. Poof, gone. Because he misunderstood this one cylinder seal. And he had a lot of other art that he really could have examined that would have given him the understanding. All he had to do was read a little bit in the Sumerian scholarship, some of the scholars of the ancient art, to find out how it was depicted, and he would have understood his mistake. But he went on and on and on with that as the linchpin of his argument. And if that falls, it's like the keystone in an arch. If you take out the keystone, the arch falls in. So, on a very quick, slim introductory basis to Zechariah Sitchin, the Nibiru is wrong, the Anunnaki is wrong, and the Nephilim. I didn't do the Nephilim. I really do want to do the Nephilim. Hold on. Let's take a look at the Nephilim, because that also is exquisitely interesting. Oh, I hope he does talk about that. Oh, he doesn't here. There's Nibiru. Why Saturn? The cylinder seal we talked about, not the sun. And the conclusion, no, he didn't have the Nephilim here. So let me just real quick, I know where it is in his writing, and I will read it to you. I will put this up on the screen also, because it is so important to right there. Is that the one? Let's see. Anunnaki online. No, the myth of the 12th planet, the seal, the Anunnaki. Let me see if this is the right one. No, that's not it. Let's see, the Nephilim. Where are the Nephilim? Anunnaki, the myth, Anunnaki, Nibiru. Well, I know I've got the Nephilim here somewhere. Hold on. Let me check real quick. That's the cylinder seal. That's the Nibiru. Oh, here we go. Okay, now I will be able to get to the Nephilim. Let's stop the screen here and present. And sorry, you get to take a quick little break. Okay, here we go. Nephilim. Yeah, this is it. Okay, so the analysis of the Nephilim is very interesting. Mr. Sitchin, I hope you guys can see that. You should be able to. Yeah. Yep, I will read this. Mr. Sitchin contends that the word Nephilim means those who came down from above, or those who descended to earth, or people of the fiery rockets. Yeah, and I will touch on that also. Well, these traditions, these translations, of course, serve his purpose to see the Nephilim as ancient astronauts. But he's wrong about the meaning of Nephilim. Much of his overall thesis fails. Unfortunately, the translations are completely out of step with the Hebrew Bible. And Sitchin's mistake, he assumes Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word naphal. which usually means to fall. He then forces the meaning, quote, to come down, unquote, onto the word Nafal, creating his to come down from above translation. However, in the form we find it in the Hebrew Bible, if the word Nephilim came from the Hebrew Nafal, it would not be spelled this way. The form Nephilim cannot mean fallen ones. Otherwise, it would be spelled Nephilim. I'm right here, Nephilim. Oh, I thought I could highlight that. Yeah, right there. Can you see that highlight? Hold on, and I'll check and see. Yeah, you can see that I highlighted that word. I'm sorry it's so small. Likewise, the Nephilim does not mean those who fall or those who fall away. That would be Nophilim. But that's not what we have. The only way in Hebrew to get Nephilim from Nephal, by the rules of Hebrew morphology, Nephilim from Nephal, by the rules of Hebrew morphology, that is, word formation, would be to presume a noun spelled Naphil and then pluralize it. But this does not exist in biblical Hebrew. And so that's crazy. In the Aramaic noun, Naphilah does exist. It means giant. Not one who falls down, but giant. And this is why the Greek translation, the Septuagint Greek, the ancient Greek translation of the translates it giant. And here's the Jastrow's Dictionary of the Targumim, etc., right here. This part, it talks about the translation of the Naphil. You see the Hebrew right here, the Naphil, is the giants. They are called Nephilim because they caused the downfall of the world. It's the name of a demon. It can also refer to a nervous prostration. It's also a species of a lizard living in the water, interestingly enough. Notice that Jastrow actually gives us the form of the plural in Aramaic, Nephilim, ending in N, not in M. And this is how Aramaic plurals work. So it's most likely that Nephilim is an Aramaic term imported into Hebrew at the final editing of the Hebrew Bible in Babylon. And that was because Aramaic was the main language. So that is the problem with his Nephilim. It does not mean those who came down to heaven. And the reason he put it that way is he wants it to be ancient astronauts. But this is not the correct way of how the Hebrew works. That's a very brief, probably too brief introduction to this, but I wanted to at least touch that. And then the Shumu rockets. Yeah, I've got to share this. Hold on. I don't think this is going to. Oh, yes, it did. It did change it for me. Okay, the Shumu, the rockets. Now, Sitchin says that there are rocket ships in the Sumerian texts. That is not true. In the Sumerian dictionaries, they created the scribes, the ancient scribes created their own dictionaries. And what they did is they put words of Sumerian and Akkadian together on the cuneiform tablets, and they grouped common words, and they grouped inventory of word meanings and lexemes of languages used, and they called these the lexical lists. They are indispensable for deciphering the Sumerian and Akkadian texts. The meaning of Sumerian mu, that's the second part of Shumu, which he says means rocket ships. But the meaning of mu is an oval, as Sitchin defines it, an oval-topped conical object, and that which rises straight. But he doesn't cite any Sumerian dictionary. When we check the dictionaries with the Sumerian grammars and the online Sumerian dictionaries, they reveal no such word meanings. But the real issue is, why trust the modern scholars when we can check with the Mesopotamian scribes ourselves? And so that's what he does. And I love how he does this. This is really cool. There's the lexical lists. Shumu in Akkadian means heaven or part of the heavens, or perhaps rain. According to the scribal tablets themselves, the meaning is not that which rises straight or a canonical object. In other words, a rocket ship. So that is very interesting. And here are the various meanings of Shumu. Of Shumu over here. Shumu, etc. Here's the various lists of names. The lexical lists, the mu in this is, it is equated with Shumu in this particular text. And he says both mu and geese also occur in the name for the sky or parts of the sky. It does not mean jet rocket. So the meaning of Shumu here that which is a rocket ship is what Sitchin says it means. However, the Akkadian does not mean that. It doesn't even derive from Shumu. So the translation of Sitchin is what's called a relative pronoun. And he's unaware of Sumerian grammar at this point, because the Sumerian language does not have a class of pronouns that are relative pronouns. That's critical. That is questioning his ability to translate. There are no texts in Sumerian and Akkadian that have the words rocket, fiery rocket, cone-shaped for Shumu. There simply don't exist. That's all just make-believe. And then you can look at this Chicago Assyrian Dictionary video and the Pennsylvania Sumerian Dictionary for Shumu, and you will not find that it means the rocket ship. Now, these tools are the elite lexicons for Akkadian and Sumerian available to scholars in the field today, and they are free online. And then he breaks it down more, even to say the meaning of May, which is mu, and none of it is a space helmet. He says there is a translation of texts that talk about a space helmet. That is completely false. That it involves space travel is a fabrication. There is a presumed connection, according to Sitchin, between that and the passage he quotes on page 136, like Enlil fastens to Inanna's body objects which Inanna wears for her journeys in the boat of heaven. And so Sitchin wants to turn the boat of heaven into a spaceship and a space suit, but the words do not say that. There is no space travel in the texts. That comes from his interpretation of the boat of heaven in which Inanna rides. The mu Inanna takes, the me's with her on her trip in the mu, and so his translation is completely wrong. She is wearing gear, but it's not a spaceship, and it's not a helmet like the astronauts wear, etc. And so that is, and then he gives some scholarly materials here that you can check out. The Cylinders of Gudea, the Real Lexikon der Esserologie, der Mythos Inanna und Enki, unter besonderer Berücksichtigung der Liste der MI, etc. You've got the scholarly literature. There is just nothing here that means spaceship, rocket ships, etc. Unfortunately, for Zechariah Sitchin, this is all just invented. So if you can invent your own evidence to support your thesis, then hot dog. But it's almost as bad as, that's even worse, I think, than the LDS scholar Kerry Mulstein, the Egyptologist, who says, I begin with the fact that the book of Abraham in the Mormon scripture, the Pearl of Great Price, is true. And then I go research all of the evidence that supports that thesis. I mean, that is a beautiful example of doing scholarship and research that will end in only one place: confirmation bias. And then he has the audacity to say the Holy Spirit testifies to him that his scholarship is true. I mean, that's pretty bold. But Sitchin is not doing any worse. So this is very interesting. It's all a basis of learning. Well, I mean, for lack of a different way to explain it, it's all a basis for learning how to think critically. And that is what we have to do. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover tonight. We covered Anunnaki, Nephilim, the rocket ships, the Shumu, and the Nibiru, and none of it's in the texts. None of it, the way Sitchin translates it. And so what's left? His whole basis of his entire story are those four elements, and none of them are there. So this is why we need to carefully explore scholarship and claims of scholarly analysis. And because ultimately, I just want to find out what's real. I just want to find out what's true, right? And so that means I'm going to have to let go of a lot of stuff that I think I know. And I'm going to have to read a lot of stuff and then compare and cross-check and reference and let go of a lot of stuff, even though it pleases me. Just because it sounds good, feels right, etc., doesn't make it true history, right? And so we have to be careful. So there's always that element of care and discrimination that we need to utilize in all of our studies of the UFOs. This is why it is so important to go gather our own data. And I have exceptionally exciting news. Tomorrow, I get my night vision binoculars. So I'm very excited about that. Once the weather clears, I can't see anything in the sky for the next week. But once it starts clearing, I'll see if I can go out and find something. But even that's no guarantee that I'm going to get something. But I'm going to try, and I'm going to try to keep it just as realistic as I possibly know how. There are people who have said, be careful, because I could become very discouraged because nothing I video will be UFOs. That very well could be true. And I will say so if that is what is happening. I'm not going to make up a whole bunch of cock and bull story about UFOs and stuff and, oh, my battery went out. If my battery goes out, then there's not going to be any story. I'm going to show you the damn video, right? That's how I'm going to approach this. So anyway, thank you so much for being such a terrific, attentive audience. I hope this is valuable to you guys. I personally love this stuff. Oh, I have a boatload of stuff on King Arthur and the Holy Grail and the whole mythos of that and the castles. I mean, who doesn't love that romantic crap? It's so much fun. I'm looking forward to expressing that too. So, but I am going to head out, you guys. Appreciate all your support. I love y'all. It's fun to have such great people who are investigating and exploring with me, correcting me, supporting me, etc. We're all just trying to sift through the evidence, and sometimes it's not easy, truly. And we're all going to make mistakes. So I know sometimes I have a tendency to get judgmental. You know, I throw a little bit of judgment in there, and you know, I've got to watch that too. But we all do it. But my mental image is that we're all spiraling upwards in knowledge and understanding. That's the ultimate. So the old corkscrew, you know, the Fibonacci series golden ratio. That's another subject that I want to share with you that is extremely mind-boggling, along with Einstein's relativity. Yeah, you heard me right. Fibonacci series, the golden spiral, and Einstein's. I'm not kidding. And when we get to the quantum physics, oh boy. Get ready for a brain bust there. So anyway, lots of stuff to come out. I sure appreciate all of you. I appreciate everybody who shares your knowledge with me in the comments to my videos too. I try to read the comments as best I can. Sometimes it takes me a week to get through them all, etc. But usually I'll just put a heart on it, acknowledging, yes, I've read your comment and I like that comment, unless of course you say something snotty to me and then I smart off back. It's all in good fun and friendship, I promise. None of us really know a whole lot, so we're working through it together. So, all right, you guys, I appreciate all of you. I'm going to head out. Oh, good, Lavender A, you're finally catching a live show. Way to go. Whoop. I'm going to even, it keeps moving. There you go. I'm finally catching a live show. Good job. Way to go. Me too. I'm finally catching my live show. So, oh, hey, Debbie Donovan. Love you, girl. You're awesome. I hope things are going well with you. She's a hoot. We go way back. She's been very supportive. Lots of fun stuff. Lots of fun people. Let me see if I can see anybody else I like besides all of you. All right, you guys. Thanks for putting up with me. I will catch you soon. More videos coming. I do go back to work this next week. I have healed pretty decently. Thank you for all your support and prayers and thoughts, etc. I'm healing. I just have to be real careful. I can't go out there and try to act like Mr. Olympia and lift a bunch of stuff, which I'm not going to do. No way. But I am going back to work. So I will get back to my routine of doing evening videos. And I will just keep on plugging away and we'll take her as we go. Thanks, you guys. Have a great night.